you're looking for me, you can, it's probably easier to find me through CEDAL. And please do email or call with any questions at all that you might have, especially if any of you have to slip out before we're done today. Please feel free to follow up that way with us.
And I also wanted to give credit to Hope Fisher, which is the actual original author of this presentation. We just adapted to sort of the Georgia State. I met her at a conference, and she was kind enough to let me use it. So we're going to be sharing that with you. You will see some numbers and statistics that apply to Georgia State. So those are our numbers. So the reason why we're doing this is because we've been experiencing a higher and higher number of students diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And we have a lot of students with that diagnosis enrolled at different campuses. And it's been coming to my attention certain misunderstanding and miscommunication between instructors and students on the spectrum. So the whole goal of this presentation is to make that communication easier by identifying, what are their weaknesses, how as a professor, as an instructor, you can improve the way you communicate and understand their behavior, so that the interaction can be easier. And if everybody understands each other really well, so things should be better. So that's the reason why we are taking the initiative of doing this. We already did it at Clarkston, Newton, Dunwoody, and I hope to keep doing it through the rest of the campuses to raise an awareness of our students on the spectrum and how to interact and understand them. Okay. I also wanted to say, if you have a question as we go through, just please ask. We're not going to have an official Q&A question and answer at the end. But please, if you have a question, just feel free to interrupt and ask. Okay. So the topics that we're going to be discussing is the definition and prevalence of autism spectrum disorder. We're going to give you some real and fictional examples of people with autism spectrum disorder. We're going to talk about different characteristics of college students with autism spectrum. Dr. Crowther is going to talk about the disability from a professor's perspective. And then at the end, we're going to talk about our office, Disability Services, and how we help students on the spectrum in terms of providing accommodations for them. The basics are, back in 2013, autism, Asperger's syndrome, I don't know if you've heard of that, but that was the name that was given to people who were diagnosed with autism but were high functioning. And as we're going to see on the next slide, autism is a spectrum. So you will see students who are diagnosed with autism spectrum who are really low, very low functioning. Some people who are in the middle, and some people who are really high functioning. The high functioning one, also considered mild autism, they were called Asperger's, and those are the kind of students that we have here. For obvious reasons, they still struggle with that. They have some communication difficulties, and they do have repetitive and restrictive behaviors and interests that you can see in the classroom, and they're easy to identify. They're very easy to see. And also, and I would say number two is the main issue with our students here, is the social interpersonal barriers. And the reason why that is a problem at the college level in our university is because, as we all know, our students sometimes they have to work in groups, and they have to do projects, they have to work together. And that is a challenge to a lot of our students on the spectrum. I will talk a little bit about accommodations for our students, specifically when it comes to working in groups, okay? Also, in general, it's a developmental disorder. I just wanted to point that out. It's a developmental disorder. As we mentioned before, it is a spectrum. You will see people with severe autism, even with mild intellectual disabilities. Yes?
I was just curious on the previous slide what it meant by restrictive behavior on the number 3 there.
Yeah, it's like if you, and this is well seen in more in children, like when they get really almost obsessed with an activity, and that's all they do. I have a friend with a child, he's a boy. He was diagnosed with the severe kind of autism, and his boy is almost all the time inside his room playing with Legos all the time. And if you don't interrupt him and get him out of the room, he can spend hours and hours and hours inside that room playing with Legos. So it is a very repetitive behavior, you know, like in this case playing. And he particularly liked Legos, so that's his world at that time. And it is restrictive. We call it restrictive because they don't do anything else. It's what they really like. They are really submerged into that activity specifically. Okay?
Thank you.
So we talked about severe autism, autism right in the middle. The people with severe autism, it can be very disabling. You know, sometimes they are diagnosed even with mild intellectual disabilities or intellectual disability, and they really need, most of the time, they need help, even accomplishing normal daily life activities. So they really, really need support. And there are people on the middle who, with the help of a therapist and different resources, they can manage to cope with the condition and lead a very independent life. And then the high functioning autism, previously called Asperger's syndrome, again, those are our students, so they still struggle with interpersonal skills. But the good thing about them is that they keep their, they have exceptional intellectual, some of their abilities, and also, they kept their verbal skills, whereas in severe and sometimes autism right in the middle, you see that they have really, really hard time communicating with others. My friend, his boy, is not able to even communicate. Just a few words, and he is almost 10 years old. So the prevalence of autism is quite common, and it's been more common more than ever nowadays. We have 1 in 59 U.S. children diagnosed with autism. 1 in 59. It is 4 times more prevalent in males than females. And then in higher education, 10 to 14. Yes.
I was actually reading that they think that it's less commonly diagnosed in females because we are more socialized to be pleasers, and therefore we hide a lot of the symptoms of higher functioning autism. That was just something I was reading that was being researched. I wanted to throw out there.
Thank you. Yeah, who knows? That's what they say. 4 times more common in males than females, and I've seen it. I've seen it personally. It is every time a student with autism comes to my office, most of the times they're males. So in higher education, 10 to 14 of U.S. college students with disability. So those who come to disability services and disclose themselves with a disability, about 10 to 14 have autism spectrum. Our college has approximately 10% of students with autism. And again, these are people who has identified themselves with a disability and who have come to our office to request accommodations. we're going to start giving you some examples of real life individuals with autism, and then we're going to also mention some fictional people, characters who with autism. Temple Grandin, she is a professor, best-selling author, and also an autism activist. She was diagnosed with autism herself, so she became an activist and made that her mission practically in life. Very bright person, very smart. Time magazine actually named her as one of the 100 most influential people in 2010. And she was also credited with breaking down many barriers to understanding autism through her knowledge and innovations in the livestock industry. I'm gonna play a video for you, and this is her own personal testimony about what it is to live with autism.
You know, you never get cured of autism. But what you do is you learn about it, is you learn more and more things.
Well, I didn't speak until I was 4. Now I have a BA and a master's, and I'm studying for my doctorate.
I can remember the frustration of not being able to talk. I couldn't get my words out. My speech came in gradually, a few words at a time. When I was a little kid, I was very autistic, nonverbal, rocking, you know, that's the kind of kid they just put away in the institution. But I had a speech teacher that worked really hard with me, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of young children getting early intervention. You got a 2-year-old or 3-year-old with no speech, don't wait. High school was absolutely the worst part of my life. Teasing. I got kicked out of school for throwing a book at a girl, teased me because, you know, teasing really made my life miserable. And the only places I could get away from teasing was the specialized activities. Things like horseback riding, electronics lab, model rocket club. The line was drawn in the sand. I was not allowed to become a recluse in my room. I had to get out and do things. I'm always kind of baffled at just how illogical people are in their thinking. I'm very logical in my thinking. But when I was younger, I didn't know that other people thought more in words. You see, I think in pictures. If I don't have a picture, I don't think. And my mind is very associative. Being a visual thinker, I tend to put things into categories. You see, autism is a very big spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, you got half the people of Silicon Valley. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got somebody who's very handicapped, remains nonverbal, is going to have to live in a supervised living situation. Really big spectrum. And you know, Einstein probably be labeled autistic today in a lot of school systems because he had no speech until age 3. I'm interested in seeing something that makes real change. I've done a lot of work that's made a lot of improvements in the livestock industry, and I think I've helped a lot of kids succeed. I want to see the kids that are like me succeed. That's the kind of stuff that makes me happy, when I see the things that I do make a difference.
And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make a difference because, you know, no one can understand, I think, my opinion, our students with autism better than us, that we see it all the time. We have students in our classrooms with autism. We see their behavior. We see, and sometimes they are misunderstood. Sometimes they are thought of like a threat. Sometimes I call it, they think out loud sometimes. So they don't even think before they say something, and they say it out loud. And when they say something out loud, it might be something they don't mean to hurt. They're not meaning to hurt nobody, but they say it. And then if someone hears that, like an instructor or even another classmate, that they might misinterpret that and, you know, interpret it as a disrespectful behavior. And that's what we're trying to, you know, we're trying to raise an awareness of that so that you can understand the way they interact with other people, the way they say things, so that to avoid misunderstanding, miscommunication between instructors and staff in general. One thing I forgot to ask, I typically do ask, how many of you are staff? How many of you are instructors? Okay, all right. Anyone from law enforcement? Okay. I was hoping to have someone from law enforcement, because they are the ones, you know, that typically respond to, you know, instructors call when they, you know, see that, and we had that issue before, a student on the spectrum saying something that he shouldn't have said in public, in the classroom, and the instructor interpreted it as something disrespectful and even threatening, and the instructor was afraid and immediately called security, and then the person handling the situation didn't do it the best way possible. So those things are the ones we're trying to avoid. These are famous people with autism spectrum. She is an actor, Daryl Hannah. She's an actress. James Durbin, a singer from American Idol. Susan Boyle, singer from Britain's Got Talent. And she was actually a finalist. So as you can see, some of them, they are really famous. They have great musical abilities, and also they can act. So do you know these people? Okay.
I don't know, Anna.
Yep. So, and I'm missing here.
Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, a lot of people, even Albert Einstein. That's what Temple, you know, Grandin was mentioning. If Einstein would have been around in our times, he would have probably been diagnosed with autism, because he displayed, you know, facets of autism, which back in his times he wasn't known. This is our example that we have of a fictional character, Sheldon Cooper. Have you seen that series? Yeah, Big Bang Theory. It's sad that it's coming to an end, because this was one of my favorite shows. But here is his resume. He's a physicist, works at Caltech, quantum mechanics researcher. His IQ is 187. You know what's the average IQ? Average? Well, 120 is almost at the high level, genius almost. Yeah, about 100. Plus, minus 10, maybe. So his is 187. That's way above the genius level. And here's the thing: he spends most of his time at home, right? Regularly seeks advice on interpersonal skills from his neighbor and physicist roommate. If you remember the show, he was constantly asking his roommates, "How do I do this? How do I interact with this person? What's the appropriate thing to say in this type of situation?" So his friends describe him as rigid, lacking in apparent empathy, and irony challenged. So these are his characteristics. Now, when they interviewed the writers of the episodes, he says, no, he doesn't. Apparently, they didn't come up with this character to say that he was autistic or that he had autism. That was not the original purpose. But when the actual actor was asked, he said, no, I don't think, but he couldn't display more facets of it. And as you can see, I'm going to play some videos from the actual show where you can see different behaviors associated with students or people who, in the diagnosed with autism spectrum. His mom, fictional mom, says, I had him tested as a child, although I still feel I should have taken him to that expert in Houston. And then she actually said that in one of the episodes. The producer of Big Bang Theory, he said, our feeling is that Sheldon's mother never got a diagnosis, so we don't have one. So that's why Sheldon, you know, he's not officially on the show seen as a person with autism, but like